Hey guys, welcome along. So here we are, part 8 I believe now of this Saturn V build. Timeline today is Wednesday, May the 8th. So yeah, cracking on with this build. And the last couple of days have been basically just waiting for stuff to dry really. These seams have come out really nice. I'm really chuffed with how they've come out. They've got some green paint on them now. And I'm going to try and show you in the light. You can see that that's with no filler, no nothing. And then on this side, where you can see there's a few spots, that's where I've sanded it, and I can see there's unsanded paint. So literally tiny little pin marks in the joint, and I think this is the side where there was some sprue goo. So yeah, basically what you do is you just fill those little divots in, leave it for a day or so to dry. If you're after a perfect seam, this is, leave it for a day or so to dry, and then polish it again, paint it again. And I'm just going to keep doing this until when I sand it. I mean, there's a bit there I've missed. There's one little spot there I've missed. But keep doing it until when you sand it, you get a finish like that. And you don't want to see anything under there at all. Just sanding marks. And there's that little spot there that I've missed. Tiny little divot. And that's what you get in the plastic where there's a seam, or that probably was where there was a sprue connecting point and it's just torn a bit of the plastic when it was cut off, or it probably snapped off in the box, as many of these parts did. This is the pathetic second stage exhaust area. Ugh. So that's what I've been doing. This one you can see there's a couple of spots there. This side is far as the spot there. But basically I'm really chuffed with how these have come out. And I hope you guys have taken it on board, what I actually said about how to do this with the, with the pieces inside to get that interlocking. If you look at other videos, I'm not going to mention any names because it's not fair. But if you look at other videos, there are guys out there that have got these things plastered in green putty. There's ones where they finished and you can see the actual seam. But this, I mean, if you look for the amount, I mean, there is no filler in there at all. If you remember, I put a spot of sprue glue on there, but that was only because, remember, if you go back to, I think it's in part 1, maybe part 2, when you look at these halves where they come together like this, where the join was, it was like all ripped where it come out of the mould, and there was all sort of undercuts. So instead of coming round, exaggerated, instead of coming around like this, it sort of came around like this, and I had to basically fill this area. So really chuffed with how this has come out. And those areas where the where I've done the scribing, I think that's a massive improvement over the raised area you get with the kit. So I'm really chuffed with that as well. There's one groove there, needs opening up a bit. I thought I'd just do that now while I'm here. There's one groove there which is a bit light, that one in the middle. Well, there's no such thing as one in the middle because they're either side of the seam, aren't they? So I'm just going to clean that one out a touch, just to fatten it up a bit. Make it match the others. There we go, that's that done. And yeah, that side's fine. So there's a couple of areas where it's gone a bit wrong, but just to show you, don't think that really matters. If you look at this one here, you can see there, if I just scribe either side, I don't know if you can pick that out, but you can see next to where I've scribed, the scribing kind of went into the joint because these first two lines are just either side of the glue joint, so be careful of that. And as I say, if you are building one of these and you're doing filler or sprue goo, don't put anything in that area. Just do it on the smooth parts. Don't put anything in this area because you'll obliterate the lines you need for scribing if you're going to copy me. So what I need to do now is get this is a fairly firm sponge, and it's fairly coarse, but I'm just going to use the weight of the sponge with no pressure at all, and I'm just going to see if I can sand this away to fill that divot. And there we go, that's that done. And you can see when you go over here, you'll see tiny areas of green paint remaining, and that is where you've got a slight undercut, but it's so small you can't see it. And now I've gone this side, this is the polishing side, and I can basically now polish around that. and as you can see, the green paint disappears from everywhere once you start polishing. Same on here, keeping the, make sure you don't do this, you don't want to be rounding off the end of your stage, so just keeping the sanding stick square and just rubbing away. And there you can see that Mr. Surfacer has stayed in the low area, so that's what I want. And for this I'm going to get my sponge here and just go round, just clean up. And once I've done this, I think we'll be ready for our black primer. So as I said to you in step 7, or in chapter 7, I'm about to put chapter 6 up on YouTube today, so you'll enjoy that one. Although I think chapter 6 is, or part 6 is a little, it's sort of getting a little bit boring now, because around this area, because there's nothing much happening, and then all of a sudden now we'll start going again with the painting. And then you can see here I've polished this and I've got no areas that are showing any problems there at all. I've got an area there which I need to and remember, like I was saying to you before, you need to be careful of using soft sponges on areas where you've got filler or raised portions, because what will happen is the soft sponge will just give you a softened edge. If you've got a lump, as I said before, if you've got a lump on the table, if you've got a lump on the bench, if you can imagine getting a hard wooden block with sandpaper and sanding away, you would sand that lump away till it's flat. If you use something soft, you would basically sand that lump into a slightly raised area. So you need something hard to get down and get everything level, and then go in soft after with your polishing. The other thing I've done, which I think you might like, is this. Now this is where the obviously the BPC comes off, and then I'll take the command module off. And this, what I've done here is basically I've put plastic card in here. It's got to be trimmed back, getting tidied up. But I've put plastic card in here because when it's all clipped together, these legs stop these two from pushing in, from collapsing, but there's nothing to stop these two from collapsing. You've got these lugs here stopping them coming out, but there's nothing to stop them going in. So I've put these blocks on here, these 2 bits of 10 thou or 20 thou plastic card, or 4 bits should I say, and then when they go up, they stop that bit. When that bit shuts, whoops, it stops it pushing in. Basically it's forming a barrier so that cannot be pushed in. Okay, the other thing I've done, I've put legs down here. I've put 4 pieces of plastic card here where these corners meet at the bottom, and that's to support them, to stop them going in and basically doing this. You want them to stay, if it was just 2, you want them to stay like that. What's happens, they want to do this all the time. So basically with that like that, I can shut that one, shut that one up to it, like so, whoops, like so, and then shut that one up to them. And there I've got my circle all in, and then I can just take the command module and slot it in, give it a turn, and there we go. And now that is all I've sanded off all the detail. Whether it's accurate or not, I don't really mind, but basically you've got a far better finish than you get with the kit out of the box, and it looks much better when it's stood as a finished model. Remember I put the plastic card in there as well, you've seen that. I think that was in step 7, and basically I've done the same on the bottom. So you just put some plastic card in there, get it all squeezed together, and then when it all dries you end up with that. Okay, so I'm now able to have this as a model to display to people how it all worked. So I can actually take this off, open this up, in there will be the Lunar Module. I can go around, pick up the Lunar Module, and show people how it all worked. So there we go guys. So I'm going to get some more sanding done, and then we'll look at getting some painting done. Right, I've gone back to my old blue mat here because basically everything I'm going to show you now is black. So I've sprayed the main body, fuselage, whatever you call it, the rocket, and this has been done with a Halford's aerosol matte black, and it's just basically a quick guide coat just to get some black paint on it and see where we are. The one thing you'll notice when you use the Halford's paint, it makes everything look awful. Different textures where there's, say, green paint underneath or polished plastic as opposed to sanded plastic, it gives you these really weird effects. Don't worry about it too much. What we're looking for, this is just a base coat. I can put some Tamiya black or something on it and then sand that back and see how it looks. But basically this is all about perfecting these seams. To be honest, I'm going a little overboard here because most of these seams are white. With white it doesn't show up, so if you have got any slight imperfections, they probably won't show up in white anyway. Plus it's going to be painted black, then it's going to be painted white, then it's going to get a satin varnish coat, or it's going to get a gloss coat for the decals, then it's going to get a satin coat all over. So you know, it's going to have a few layers of paint anyway, so don't worry about like imperfections like sanding marks, stuff like that. As long as they're not too deep, they'll disappear under a couple of coats of paint. And here you can see this area. This is where there was green paint underneath. So obviously the reaction between the acrylic paint and the green paint is different than it is between the acrylic paint and the plastic. And this acrylic paint tends to kind of etch as well. So I've done, you know, I've blasted in all the ends as well. It's stage 2. You can see again we've got all the difference in colour and where it's sanded and where it's not. But I can't feel anything, so yeah, it's going to look great. I think I just quickly gave that a blast with black paint. It's a mess, but never mind. This area here has had a quick blast. I don't know what colour these are supposed to be on the ends. And then here we've got the this is basically the 4 flaps where the what's this called, the SVA or something, I can't remember now. But yeah, that's still not glued on. That's not glued on to there. But yeah, all painted. That's where I had blue tack attached to it, so not worried about that really. The only part of the model that isn't painted now is the LES. The Lunar Module's done there. The base is done with a gloss black, and the top of it is done there with a gloss black. They're not overly shiny because I don't want to get a really bright sort of chrome gloss finish on these, because they're just going to be aluminium and stuff. It's going to be a little bit dull. So yeah, they're going to look okay. Then something else I've done, and I've used a paint today for the first time I've ever used it. And if I just show you the seat, okay, I'll show you the command module first. If you can see on there the finish when it's put straight onto plastic with nothing underneath it, it's quite astounding. And that's just airbrushed on at about 20 psi, sort of 60-40 mixed with Mr. kind of leveling thinners. And something else I've thought of while I was doing this, if you stuck with the Revell system of the sort of pegging, so it all sort of pegs together on the top rather than the magnets like I've used, what you would do every time you pegged it, you would scratch some paint off. So you would end up with a lump of white, although that looks bloody awful in my opinion anyway, because it should have the docker mechanism there. But at least it's going to remain silver or black, whatever colour I choose to paint it, because it's not being touched by anything. It's just a magnet. So that's another benefit, guys, in using the magnet system. But if you look at the gloss finish on that, then you've got the CSM here, and that's been glossed over as well. And this is all ready for our metal coat, which we do want to have a bit of a sheen on. Engines, the F1 engines I've done there. I'm quite happy with how the seams have come out. If you can see that on there, I can just about see something there, but there's nothing too much to worry about. All inside's painted, and they're all glossy, ready for their metallics. I think I'm going to use Alclad. Thanks to Ted, I think his name is. Yeah, Ted from the USA. He's been sending me some pictures of all this stuff, and it's really good resource. Thank you, Ted. And he sent me some pictures today of the internals of the command module. if you saw my review on the 32nd scale Apollo spacecraft, it's called, which is basically the command module and the command service module, they suggest painting the inside like this disgusting pea green color. Well, it's not. It's very pale blue grey. So so thanks for that, Ted. You proved me right. It's not often I'm right. And here's the base plate done. That's been done. You can see this this paint. I'll tell you what it is in a minute. This paint actually responds better on bare plastic than it does on anything that's been previously painted. I think the way to use it is if you want to get a really nice sort of sheen on it, and you've been doing work with primers and stuff, I think the thing to do is paint it on, let it go hard for 24 hours, and then give it another coat, sort of 70% thinners, 30% paint, and I think that will really make it pop if you're after a very high chrome finish. These aren't much of a chrome finish, but I do want to get a nice metallic finish on it, so that's why I've gone for this. I've got quite a few metallic paints, and when we come to that, which will be in this video I think, when we come to that I will go through basically the different paints I've got and why I use some and why I don't use others. This is the paint, Mr Colour GX2. It's the first time I've ever used it. It is stunning, to say the least. It's quite smelly, and it needs to be thinned with Mr Colour leveling thinners. I'm not sure if you could use any other thinners with it. I'm not going to chance it. I'm not going to try. But it just, I mean, when you look at that, I mean, it's just incredibly shiny, and it's also dries fairly quickly. I'm not going to start working on it, but I'll leave that for 24 hours before I do anything with it. But it doesn't need any polishing or sanding or anything. You can see it's lovely, and it's ready for some nice metallic coats, I believe. Please tell me, guys, in the comments. Actually, it's pointless because by the time I've done the comments, I've done this, but I think this is like a darker sort of stainless steel kind of colour on the bottom, and then on the top you've got this very chrome-like finish. And remember, you mustn't build this model with all the heat and everything affected areas, because this, when it came back, was all burnt to a crisp. But don't do that if you build the Saturn V, because obviously at the time it went off, it wouldn't have been like that. Everything was brand new, so be a little bit careful there. So yeah, I'm going to get on with this, guys. I'm just going to let this dry now for a few hours before I do anything else. I should probably give this a coat of black, although it's sat away from everything. I'll probably give it a coat of black anyway, just to see what it looks like. But I'm quite happy with the way the LAS has turned out. So there we go. I'll see you in a few seconds. For me, it's going to be a day or two. Here we go, guys. This isn't actually a week later. This is actually about 20 minutes later. Those areas I showed you where it looked awful, where the paint was over the seams, I've gone over with some Tamiya XF1 flat black, and you can see that it all looks fine again. I mean, that area there has got absolutely nothing wrong with it whatsoever. And the same for all the seams. They're all lovely. They're all going to look great under a coat of paint. So so yeah, all good. So I need to let this harden now for a few days, like I said, a couple of days. I want to make sure that I don't get any more sinkage. Don't think I will. I didn't actually paint with this. I've gone around and touched in where the aerosol can didn't get, so that basically everything now is covered in flat black paint. All the seams, all the joints, everything. So, oh, and I did the LES as well. So I didn't want him to feel left out. So there we go, guys. You can see a difference, maybe you can't, but this is the first segment of this Saturn V video with my new lighting that's been paid for through money gained through adverts on this channel. So I guess I should say thank you, guys. I want to look at now metal coats. Now, as you know, I painted these yesterday, about 24 hours ago, with the GX2 from Mr Hobby, the Gunze paint, which is quite incredible. So we've got a lovely gloss finish on the actual command module, as you can see there, and we've got a fairly nice gloss finish on the command service module, as you can see there. Now I've got two choices here. I could go on and polish this and then paint it again. What I'm worried about, I don't want to lose any detail. and also I don't want this to have as a highly polished finish as the actual as the actual service module has, the command module. Sorry, this is like chrome on the front of here, and I'm assuming this is going to be like a dark stainless steel color. These are going to be all sorts of different colors of silvers and greys and God knows what, and I'll have to have a little mess around and play, but I'll get there in the end with these. I want these to look stunning because the F1 engine is what it's all about, isn't it? So I've got these different metallizer paints, and I'm going to sort of look at some older stuff first, and then we'll look at the newer paints. So these are the old Humbrol metal coats. Now these tins are probably, I don't know if there's a date on them, they're probably about 20 years old. They've seen better days, but they all still work. They're enamel based, and you have to stir the living daylights out of them, and then you can brush them on or put them on with an airbrush. Leave them for a while to dry. I don't know what it says on the instructions. 20 to 30 minutes drying, and then you can polish them with a soft dry cloth. They are very good, but they're not very hardy, and they do take a while to dry. Although it says 20 to 30 minutes, if you hold the stuff you can put fingerprints in it, in my experience. But also I've never used them with a gloss black undercoat, and I don't want a chance messing up this GX2 with that. So I'm going to put them to one side, and I'm going to stick with my Alclads and my other metal colour paints I've got here. Now these Mr Hobby Mr Metal colours are very, very good, with two exceptions. One is they absolutely stink. They are terrible, and also they're very, very weak. You can, I mean, the aluminium here, if you paint that onto anything, you can just rub it off. It just rubs off with your finger. It polishes up beautifully, but it rubs off very easily. I once painted some flexible hoses with it, and as soon as I touched them, it just all flaked off like little tiny specks of leaf. So that's them. Alclads, these are everybody's old favourites from years ago. I've got a few of them here. I've also got some brass and copper colours, but I'm not bothering to get them out there because I don't need them for this model. But basically these are a lacquer paint, very, very thin. You can hear the ball bearing in there, and you can see how thin it is. If I show you this, this is chrome, and you can see that in there how thin that paint is and how quickly it disperses and runs away off the side of the bottle. So, and I think this one, I think my polished aluminium's had it, because all the pigments at the bottom settle, and if I shake it, it's just all swirling around on the bottom that you can see there. So I think that one's had it. It looks like it may have actually been on its side and leaked out at some point. So I've got my airframe aluminium, I've got my chrome, and I think that's the one I'm going to test on the actual front side, or upper side if you like, of the command module, and we'll see how that comes out. Downside to these again is they absolutely stink, and they're not very hardy, but I've got some aqua gloss, so I'm going to try putting the aqua gloss over the top and see if that sort of dulls them down very much. This is kind of, in a way, a bit of a guinea pig for the 1/96 scale I'm doing here, and I've also got this jet exhaust colour, which is quite a good base. So I think I'll probably paint these exhausts with that jet exhaust colour, and then start adding on top of that after. AK do an extreme metal colour range. This one here I haven't used very much, so it's unfair really to comment too much. The one time I did use it, I painted it on a part of a Tamiya kit. I just brush painted it on, and it attacked the plastic. It actually made the plastic all wrinkle up, almost like putting cellulose on it, and that surprised me. I can't make out if it's enamel or what it is, but it's got a strange smell to it. I'm not sure what it is, but I've seen people test. It says high quality enamel based paints, but it doesn't smell like an enamel. It's strange. But if you watch some people testing it, it's very good. Now these Viejo colours, these are metal colour for airbrush, and I've got chrome and I've got dull aluminium. Now this one I've put a ball in, this one doesn't have one in. I have a problem with this aluminium. It doesn't dry. doesn't dry at all. So I got in touch with Viejo, and they said, can you tell us the batch number? So I told them the batch number, J2907, and their response was, that should be fine, sir. Okay, well, thanks. I've used it 3 or 4 times now, and it doesn't dry. It just stays sticky, and even after sort of 4 or 5 days, it's still sticky. So why I haven't thrown it in the bin, I don't know. I'm not sure if I've used this one or not. I obviously have, looking in there, but I don't remember what I've used it on. So I may give that a try on something. Maybe I'll try that on the side of the service module first and see how that goes. Because with the base coat being slightly duller, it'll come out slightly duller than if it was a highly polished finish. So maybe I'll give this a go on both, I don't know. I think underneath here, I think I'll probably use the stainless steel from Alclad. I'll use the chrome on the top, and I'll use this on the service module. So let's get the airbrush out and see how we go. Just 2 more here that I forgot to mention that are my latest favourites. The aluminium and steel, the Model Air aluminium and steel. These are really, really nice for brush painting small details. But as far as using the airbrush, I don't know. I've never tried them. I'm not going to test them out now. What I'll have to do is maybe put a video together. I'll do a test of all these and see how they all come out. Although every man and his dog has done videos on metallic colours, so I probably won't bother actually. But I can only talk from experience. Paul at ISM got me onto these, and they're wonderful for if you're say building a model car like Paul does a lot of cars, and you just want to paint in some suspension components or some uprights. These 2 colours are incredible. You've seen me use them on various builds. They're amazing. So maybe I'll try them on the airbrush of the Lunar Module. Maybe we'll see how that goes. So anyway, I'm going to get this Alclad into the airbrush now. And as I say, it absolutely stinks, but I'm going to have to suffer that for you guys because I can't. And the other thing with this Alclad, it doesn't go very far. It's very, very thin, so it doesn't go very far at all. So I'm just going to put this airbrush down here. I'm running at roughly 15 psi. So just going to blow this off, get the dust off, and then I'm going to check my flow. So I've got some flow coming through there. Now let's just see. I'm going to basically dust this on from a distance, and we'll see what happens. Now with Alclad, it's all about what's underneath that affects it. And you can see that I've got some squashing on there. This is clogging up. You can see it goes on very, very thin. You just build it up in very, very thin layers. And the beauty of it is, because it goes on so thin, you can just keep on adding. And then you can, if you wanted kind of a black chrome finish, you can see there, but you can see it brings the scratches out. So I'm not going to worry about that, because this is just going to be sat on top of its CSM, which is incorrect anyway. So I'm actually saying it stinks. I can't smell anything. And there we go. You can see we've got a very, very reflective metallic finish there. I'm just going to put a bit more in and just see what happens if I add more. And you must shake it every single time you decant. It must be shaken. Just put some more in there, and it's running down the side of the airbrush because the bottles are awful design. You could use pipettes, but I don't want to waste pipettes just for a tiny bit of paint like this. I'm just going to put the lid back on. I'm just going to check the flow. Bit of dust there. Flow is fine. Just going to dust some more on. It's drying in the airbrush, you can hear it. As I say, these Alclads are very old, as are most of my paints. You can see you just keep adding it, and you can just keep going until you get the finish you want. And there we go. I'm going to leave it at that. I've got that stainless steel look, and I'm just going to go around the edge and make sure that all the edges are coloured in. Keeps drying in the I'm getting, it's called tip dry when it dries in the airbrush. Or it could be that the airbrush needs a strip clean. And there we go. You can see I've used probably enough paint in there to paint a lot of things, and that was all that did was that little piece there, so it doesn't go very far. I'm just going to dry that back. It also dries extremely fast. That is touch dry now. So that's that one done, so I can put that to one side for a minute. Right, moving on to the exhaust now, and I'm going to use this Alclad jet exhaust ALC113 and just give them basically a base coat on something to work on. Now I'm using a pipette now because I'm going to be using quite a lot of this paint, so again just spraying it on very, very finely, not going overboard, and what it will basically do is just tint the black down to give me this jet exhaust colour. It's not really going to change it at all, and by God I can smell this one. Ooh, I'm going to do one on here, guys, and then I'm going to get to the booth to do the others, I think. Oh, it's awful. So there we go, we can see that this is giving it a very sort of dark grey sort of colour. Again, I'm at about 15 psi, and you can see there the sort of effect you get from it. It's sort of it's kind of a nondescript colour. But yeah, you can see what I'm after. So I'm going to get the rest of these done off camera because I'm going to have to go to the booth because of the smell. Okay, so those exhausts are done now, or those nozzles are done, and you can see they've got a sort of duller finish, but it's a good base for other stuff to go on to. So now we're going to come on to the CSM. Now obviously this needs some masking and stuff to do the detail work and some white and everything. So I'm going to spray this one with the AK Extreme Metal because I hear that AK is very good for masking. So let's give it a go. This is actually aluminium. I've decanted some into the airbrush. I'm just going to check my flow, and I'm still at 15 psi as I said earlier. I'm going to try and stay away from here because I have put some exhaust on there. So let's just see what this goes on like. Again, I'm spraying it very, very lightly over this gloss black finish, and yeah, it's showing up the work I've done previously, so I think I'm going to have to do some rework on this. But you can see that the actual paint itself, let's forget the finish that I've got. Yeah, the actual paint itself is going on lovely. It smells not too bad either. I can't particularly smell anything, although I do have the window open. I'm going to get all around there, even though it's all incorrect, so I'm going to get in around there anyway. Yeah, I can see some areas where I've repaired a poor scribing line, but we'll see how that looks when it's all clear coated and everything. So that's basically the command service module in the silver colour we need. So that's all looking good. And I think I might also use this on the Lunar Module. So let's see how it looks on here. You can see straight away that if you want to get a sort of darker metallic finish, you can just by going lighter. So really good for car modelers with their gearbox components and motorcycles and stuff. And if you keep on painting, it just becomes brighter and brighter. So there we go. That's a nice nice metallic finish on there. Okay, so let's have a look at doing the top of the, or the front of the command module. And now I'm going to use the Alclad ALC 107 Chrome. So it's had a good shake. It's in the airbrush. I think I'll just give it a quick blow back just to give it a quick agitation. Check the flow. That's coming through nicely. So again, I'm just going to build this up very, very slowly, and you can see straight away that the finish on there is quite astounding. So people talk about these new metal coat paints and everything being the bee's knees, and I'm afraid when you actually look at this, I'm sorry, but that is so realistic. It's untrue. And if you notice, I'm always spraying this way because I'm keeping the paint away from the bottom. Just checking my flow. And I'm literally, I'll show how much paint I'm putting on. I'll paint my finger. That's what I'm doing. It's literally, it's nothing. You can see it's just starting to show now. So it is literally just dusting it on. Okay, I'm just drying that back now. And there we go, look at that. That is gorgeous. Is it not? You'll see the reflection of my hand in it. That looks great, really chuffed with that. Okay, so let's get the airbrush cleaned out and move on to something else. Right, so we've been away for about 15-20 minutes now, or maybe half an hour. Just want to quickly go through this. I'm going to have to rework this because I'm not happy with it. You can see there's a fault in the plastic there. I don't know what's going on there, but there's a lump of something or other in there. There's some marks here where I've done work. I can just see the seam there, so I'm going to have to work on that again. You can see some marks there where I've done some work. You can see some marks there where I actually slipped the describer and repaired it with some super glue. Same again here, same again there, and yeah, that's basically that. So basically I've got a little bit of cleanup to do. This is why people run away from natural metal finish aircraft, because the one of the problems with these paints is they will show up anything. Now those little bits of super glue on there probably wouldn't have shown up under, say, well, it didn't show up under a matte black paint. I didn't see it, but these metal coats, they will actually give you, you know, they won't hide anything. So so basically you need to be pretty perfect with your finishes, where possible, if you can, like with the command module here. If you can avoid sanding at all, then do so, because you're always going to get the actual as molded plastic generally, particularly in like Hasegawa kits, is going to be better than any finish you're going to achieve by sanding it. So yeah, if you can avoid sanding, do, and then you'll get a lovely sort of chrome finish like that on your parts as well. So what I'm going to do now is give this a coat of Alclad 2 Aqua Gloss. Now sealing Alclad Chrome High Shine do not thin. So I've always been led to believe that putting any clear coat over Alclad dulls them down. So let's see what happens if I do that on here. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to get some into the airbrush, just tip some in. It's funny stuff, this. You've probably seen me use it before. You don't shake it, you don't stir it, you don't thin it, you don't do anything with it. You just pour it out of the bottle, spray it, and doesn't enough, pour it back in. I'm just going to check my flow, give the airbrush a good blow through. Just bit of a backflow just to make sure. Yeah, okay, so I'll chew the bottom first just in case it's a complete disaster. So let's just put a light coat on, and you can see that straight away it's dulled it back, but as I put more on, it should come, the gloss should come back. Now what I'm going to try and do now is just lightly turn this in the tweezers without touching it, so that I don't get a mark. Yeah, I've touched it, there you go, so that's the problem. So maybe I can blow that out. I may be able to blend it in, we'll see. It may level out, but we can see that the gloss has gone on there, and there's no doubt about it, it's taken some of the sheen away. But we need to do this because one of the problems with Alclad is it's not very hardy, and you can't put decals over it. So just go over this again. Let's see what happens. Just going to check my flow. Yeah, flow's okay. And there we go. We've still got that lovely bright finish, but it's not as bright as it was when it was just the paint. So let's let that dry and see what happens, and we'll go from there. Right, so let's give this Viejo a go. This is the Model Air Steel. I don't recall using this through an airbrush before, I don't think so. Let's just see how it works on these engines, and then I'll mask these off and paint the rest of the base plate white. But that's going on very nicely. Giving a nice sort of look to it. You can see it's performing nothing like the Alclads do. It's kind of adding, the colour builds up rather than the sheen. So just go over here, and I think this is more of a sort of one shot. You just paint this on rather than mess around with building it up, or not mess around, but it's almost like art. It's mastering Alclads is something. It's a very, very satisfying skill, but it will bite you bad, and you go too heavy, it'll run like a swine, and it makes a horrible mess when it runs. Whereas this stuff is a lot more user friendly. It's acrylic. It's a lot less poisonous. It's still not perfect, but it's a lot less poisonous than the likes of Alclad or some of those other metallics. There we go. So that is Viejo steel. So you can see it goes on, it gives a nice finish, but it's got no, it's just a silver paint, if you like. It's got no, when you compare it to the command module, it's got no real metallic look to it at all. You know, getting metallic paint out of a bottle, you know, getting something like chrome out of a bottle and act like chrome as well, and be able to put decals on it and everything. No, it's not going to happen. I believe the AK Extreme Metal is okay, and I've not tried it myself. If you're a member of Flory Models, I know he's done some very extensive, good down to earth tests of these paints, and when he first tried, I think it was the AK, it was terrible, and then he had to get another batch sent through because there was a dodgy batch. I could be wrong, it could be Viejo, but I think it was AK. But if you look over on Phil Flory's site, he may even has it as a free video on YouTube, and you can see the test where he's compared the Vallejo and the AK, and yeah, both very, very good. But having said that, my experience, you know, like I say, this one doesn't dry, so I'm scared to use this one, if you like. So there we go. Let's see if we can think of something else to paint and try something else. Right, so let's give this one a go. This is the Viejo metal colour chrome. I'm not going to use the aluminium because I don't want to be in that situation where I've tried it 2 or 3 times and on all occasions it didn't dry. So what I'm going to do is spray around the base end of this this J2 engine, just see how this looks. Doesn't seem to want to come through. Here we go. So I'm applying it very, very thinly, just like Alclad. You get a lot of tip dry with it. You got sort of all or nothing, which is one of the issues you also get with the Mr Hobby. See, it suddenly comes through. Yeah, I'm not very happy with that at all. It's totally utterly uncontrollable. And it's nothing like chrome. Yeah, not happy with that at all. That's the Viejo metal colour chrome, and when you compare that to that, it's and this is gloss coated, which dulls it down. I've got a mark now where the spoon nib's been. I might have to redo all that again. Like I say, with these metal colours, you've got to make sure that your base work is absolutely spotless. So there we go, guys. I'm going to call it a day for doing this. I'll move on to something else a bit more interesting for you before this chapter's out. But you can basically see, I might start doing a little bit of white for you, just to see. I might paint this LES system, and then you'll be able to see what I do with that. Right then, guys, white paint. Again, Phil Frawley's done some great videos on white paint. I don't make a lot of models that are white, to be honest, mainly sort of military stuff, so white is not a colour I use a lot, although I have done it. Now, I've painted this black because if you paint white over black, not only can you see that you're getting everything covered, but it always gives you a very, very deep colour, if you like. I'm hoping to show you what I mean. One of the problems I've always found with using Tamiya paints and acrylic thinners and levelling thinners and stuff like that is they tend to kind of burn. So you spray it white, you leave it, you come back 10 minutes later, it's like dark grey because it soaks in. So I'm trying something new here that I've never tried before, and what I've got is Tamiya X2 gloss white, and I've mixed it roughly 60-40 with the AK high compatibility thinners here. So let's see what happens. I'm at about 15 psi, so just check the flow and that's all okay. And I'm just going to see how it covers. What I'm kind of hoping is the glossiness of it might help to seal in or sort of seal the black, if you like. And what the black is doing is giving me a lovely base to work with. And also anywhere where it doesn't quite get into, there'll be a lovely shadow left behind. So going up in all the angles and making sure I get in all these tubes and everything, which if you remember it looking back, it was an absolute nightmare to clean up. But purely because of the age of the kit and the moulding restrictions, you know, of the day, and even today to some extent, that's why it was like that. So I'm just going to basically get a base coat on this and then leave it a few minutes to dry and see what happens. And I don't think for a minute I want a gloss finish on the model, I don't. What I'm actually after is, this is just something to seal in the matte coat that's already there, and the matte coat that's on there is black. Okay, Okay, so that's just an initial coat like that. You can see that's covered quite well. Just put a drop more on. And then what I can do is have a good look, make sure all the cleanup is done, all the seams are good. Like I can see straight away there's an area down here where the seam is showing there. I need to get into that corner and just clean that with a knife. Just go around the inside edge. And you can see that even though it's a gloss paint, it's sort of turning matte because it's soaking into the paint that's underneath it. If this was going straight onto plastic, it would have quite a nice sheen on it. And as you can see, that's like a light grey, but it will give you, because of the black underneath, it will give you a kind of depth that you won't get otherwise. Okay, so I'll leave that to dry now, and then we'll look at that in a minute, and it'll be probably a kind of grey colour. Alright, so you can see it's got some sheen on it because the paint's wet, and I've painted that wet on wet, so just keep adding paint, and then we'll see what that looks like. Right then guys, just to finish part 8 off, the command service module, as you remember, I had some funny marks in it and stuff that all became obvious once the silver paint on. I can't remember which paint I use now. So I've basically corrected all those issues and then decided to paint it white. Now, this is actually inaccurate. This is a block 1 service module in design. So you've got two options really. You can either just sand it all off and then re-put some grills on it and stuff to turn it into a block 2. If you look at my 196 stuff, you'll see on there the differences. Basically this one's got vertical grill panels here. The block 2 is all sort of wider panels going around the top and bottom. But also this kit has got those 8 rocket motors on stage 2, which I've discovered from my wonderful new wear upgrade set. I've done a review, if you've seen it, for the 196, that actually it was only the first 2, I think, that actually had those 8 rocket motors. So really this model is, rather than being an accurate representation of any Saturn V manned spacecraft that ever flew, this is going to be a living room display piece that will show people how it worked. It wasn't even, I mean, I'll be honest, it wasn't until I started doing this I realised that the actual, this lot came off and turned around and went back in and got the Lunar Module. I didn't realise that. I'd never even considered it, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, so I think a lot of people would be interested to see that. So what I've decided is this model does not represent any accurate representation of any manned lunar spacecraft or rocket that ever went to the moon or ever even entered orbit. So basically, I mean, it could, I don't know, it may be the same as Apollo 1, which terribly caught fire before it ever even got off the ground and killed all 3 astronauts. But I've decided I'm just going to build it out of the box, as they say, and let's just go from there. I've also had a photograph sent to me from Ted. Thank you very much, Ted. He's been sending me a lot of information on this kit, or on the Saturn V. And as it turns out, that awful stage 2 with the sort of the rocket exhausts just left in midair, in real life that actually had like a bag or a cloth all over it. So when you actually looked up into the stage 2 interstage, all you actually saw was those ends of those nozzles sticking out. The rest behind it was like a canvas. So I may see if I can replicate that, I don't know. But I digress. So what I did with this, I basically went in the scratches and filled them in with Mr Surfacer. I've sanded down where the super glue remarks were, where I'd actually, corrected my scribing. And and then sort of giving it a coat of Mr Surfacer 1000 thinned down with Mr Hobby leveling thinners. Let that go off for 36 hours, and then just had a few coats of the gloss white for the X1, sorry, the X2, isn't it, from Tamiya, thinned with Mr Hobby leveling thinners again. And I've also now given this its few final coats. We can see in here that there's some corrective work needed. Whether I do that or not, I don't know. But the reason I'm using the gloss, and it seems to work, when you spray matte white over a darker colour, it tends to sort of soak in. You paint it, it looks white, and then you look at it a couple of hours later and it's darker again, you know, and it just keeps soaking in. And the reason I've used the gloss is to try and see if I can get a white colour, because it'll kind of go on and form a shell and seal rather than soak in, and it seems to work. I mean, that's pretty white if you ask me. So yeah, I don't really want a glossy finish on the model, so I'll probably give it all a satin varnish in the end. This here is going to have to remain gloss because it's going to get a gloss coat over the metal I'm going to put on there in a minute. But yeah, quite pleased with overall how it's coming out. Only trouble is it takes quite a while to dry because it's a gloss paint. So I'm going to get a metal coat on here. I can see I've still got some marks in there now, which are going to stick out like a sore thumb when we put the metal coat on there. So I'm just going to see if I can just give those a polish back. That should have improved things a bit, and that'll probably stick out like a sore thumb now when it's got the metal paint on there. But hey, this is a toy. So basically all this masking, all I've done here is I've literally, with a rule, I've measured these panels here, and they're all different, which is weird. It seems like the middle one on both sides is about 3mm, and the others either side are just under and down to 2. Like you see, that one there is narrower than that one, and that one's 2.5mm. So that's all I've done there, and they're all about 8.5mm high. So all I've done is I've taken you can see down here, I've taken a piece of 10mm masking tape. I've cut 1.5mm off, which is here, yeah, which is that piece there. Then I've cut this into 3mm and 2.5mm wide strips and just sort of stuck them on, really, and that's so that's masked them off. Then this piece here, this is a piece of 6mm wide masking tape, and what I've done there, I used that piece that I cut off of here and put it on and then cut it to the right length. It turns out it's about 25mm the length to get this piece here. So put those two on, one other side. Then with this piece, I've put that on the edge of that, and then put this piece of blue. This is Jammy Dog masking tape. I love it. It's great stuff. Again, introduced to me by Phil Flory. It's very, very flexible. It's good. I mean, there's better stuff around here. You get the vinyl tapes like this one from Tamiya, but I don't have it in a 1mm width. So basically, I've put that piece in there, butted up against this piece, and then let me just show you. And then what you can do, I'm going to show you roughly rather than do it all properly. And then what you can do is you can put this piece on like this, butt it up to that one, yeah, and then if that's butted up like that to that one, then you can butt the blue one up to that one and then take this one off, and you know you've got an equal gap all the way around. And then this is just simply a piece of 6mm masking tape put around the bottom edge up to that scribed line, the line that I scribed. So there we go, guys. Just want to start off here, guys, by saying I owe you an apology. In the last few bits of video, I have actually watched them, and I've noticed that when I'm airbrushing, most of the time, it's making the camera shake. I've had a bit of a rearrange of my bench, and I've got my paint stand now bridging the bench that the airbrush, the compressor is on. So basically it's been shaking the camera slightly. So but the compressor is now on the floor, so you won't get the same problem now. So apologise for that. Lesson learned and all that, you know. So I'm going to get my piece of paper towel over from over here. Get this on the bench here. And then this is, once again, this is the Alclad chrome I'm using. So I'm just checking my flow. And I'm just going to put this on very, very lightly. And this will show you the effect of using different colour base coats with your Alclads. It can give you very interesting tonal differences. You can even, with like if you're spraying a natural metal finish aircraft, you can do certain panels, just give them a matte coat before you put the Alclad on, and it gives it a total different tonality. You can see there, that's looking like a very sort of fresh new aluminium look, you know, which is kind of the look we're after, really. But as I say, this model is now sunken into the ranks of being a toy, if you like. But I'm still going to finish it, and I'm still going to, you know, try and do as nice a job as I can of it. But I'm not going to be, like for instance in here, you can see now the metal coat's on. We can see that there's something going on, but I'm not going to worry about it. I may give it a wash. We'll see. Just get some in there. And we're out of paint, so I'll just get some more paint, give this another quick coat, and I'll be back. Right, this is the bit I know you all like to see. I started and then thought, yeah, I think you like to see this. Everybody loves unmasking. So you can see I've started. I'm just going to get the corner of a knife blade, just get it underneath the masking tape without scratching the silver, and then just with the tweezers grab the corner of the tape, peel it back. You can see, because I was putting on very, very light coats, we've got no bleed or anything, but there's that little tiny slither there that I put in. Oh, come on. You see, as soon as you put the camera on, everything stops going smoothly. A dog's barking because there's some children outside. How dare they? How dare they be outside my house? And there we go, guys. It's as simple as that. Just get the knife under the corner, lift it up. Okay, I'm going to finish this off with dog barking harmonies in the background. And there we are, guys. I'm going to give this a very thin, clear coat. I don't want it too glossy, but I do just want to get something on there. Alclad paints tend to be not very durable, and they're a little bit finicky when you try and put decals on them, decals on them, whatever you call them. So, so there we go, guys. And you can see, like I was saying about the different base coats and everything, this is exactly the same paint. And I'll show you now. Look at that. That's the exact same paint. That's the chrome paint on top of the black, the GX2, and that's the chrome paint on top of the white. So you can see there, you know, and the one thing we can learn from this, I mean, if you look at there, I've left a tiny mark where the sprue connection was, and it sticks like a sore thumb now. And these areas around here that I've worked on these little thrusters, they're all sticking out like a sore thumb. So that's why people run away from natural metal finish aircraft and stuff, is because you need to be so absolutely perfect with your repair work on seams and stuff. You know, if you've seen a beautiful 48 scale B29 in natural metal finish and you can't see any seam down the fuselage or anything, that guy has taken a long, or woman has taken a long time to get that seam absolutely perfect. So and just to give you an idea of how this is going to look, just to finish off this part, and now the blue tack won't come out. Look at that. It's because the camera's on, I swear. Look at that. The blue tack will not come out. It's always the same when the camera's on. Now, while I was painting this fell off. So it just shows you sod's law. So that's just going to plonk on there now with its magnet. So that's how it's going to look when it's sat on top of the Saturn V. So I'm quite pleased with that. Hopefully you will be too when you build yours. So there you go. So thanks for watching this part 8. I hope you've enjoyed it. I think we've learned a bit about metal coats and everything. And just as a matter of interest, it's like Paul said in a video the other day, you should never slag off somebody's, or never comment on somebody's products if you're not happy with them without contacting the persons first. Well, I have contacted Viejo, and they've come back and told me that the paint should dry, and it doesn't. And this panel here, this was the Vallejo Model steel, if you remember. That one. Vallejo Model steel, yeah, used in the airbrush. I normally use it on the brush for touching in details and stuff. Used on the airbrush, painted over the GX2, which was left for, I can't remember now, 18-24 hours to dry, and it still hasn't dried. It's you can hear it's still sticky. So yeah, thanks Viejo, wonderful paint. Now I know why a lot of people don't bother with Viejo anymore. Bloody stuff, it's really annoying because I don't know what to do now. I can't mask it and paint this, because if I mask it, the masking tape will weld to it because it's not cured. If I give it a clear coat, I don't think the clear coat will dry on top of it either, so I may just have to strip it and start again, which is why it's so frustrating. Thank you very much, Viejo, brilliant, well done. So there we go. Thanks for watching. If you've liked this, please give me a like. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon with part 9, where we'll start getting some paint on the major parts.